Hey, welcome to Faith and Culture Now. Today I'm joined again with Dr. Steve Hunter, and so it's great to have you back.
Yeah, I'm glad to be back for round two.
That's right. So this is our part two of our discussion on just the issue of suicide, and what you talked about last time was the prison of pain that people find themselves in.
Yes, right. Mm-hmm.
And today we'll be focusing a little bit on just sort of the intervention part of suicide.
Yeah, I would like to focus on that part of it. So, okay, we know it's a problem. It's actually an epidemic. What are we going to do about it? How can we intervene? So,
yeah,
definitely have an answer for that.
And last time we talked about a number of issues surrounding suicide. It's been a couple of weeks since we filmed our last video, and in that time I've had to deal with three different issues of teenagers and adults committing suicide or attempting suicide in our community. And so again, just highlighting the fact that this is a huge epidemic in our culture. Just to sort of recap the last video that we did, we talked about just people feeling intense pressure, and you talked about the 3 A's. If you wanted to maybe just kind of briefly hit on those again, just in summary.
Yeah, I can do that. So I'll give the picture in my head. First of all, I think about baby Jessica. I don't know if you remember that in 1987. She fell down in this pipe, 20 feet. She was 18 months old, and it took 56 hours to rescue her. And that's really kind of my picture of the prison, that it's circle. And then I put north, south, east, and west on that circle. Or that prison, really kind of a self-imposed prison to a large degree, so that south I have the abuse and / trauma. So there's this overwhelmingly painful event in the past, and so it's past pain. And then I guess what would that be? East, so I'm kind of bad with north, south, east, west, but east would be present pain, and that is addiction. That's all of my attempts to try and soothe the pain, escape pain, numb pain, avoid pain, and all of my methods are temporary at best. The north is really, it's hard for me to understand why when we talk about suicide, that we don't automatically talk about anxiety. We live in a culture of anxiety and fear, but this is possible pain or potential pain or even projected pain into the future. It hasn't even happened.
Yeah.
But I have this constant anxiety, these panicky feelings that the worst is just around the corner, or I'm never going to be able to escape this pain. It's never going to end. And so there's this anxiety that feeds and pressurizes everything that leads us to then west is perpetual pain. And that's what closes the cycle. So really I'm trapped inside of this pain. I'm trapped. There's no way out. There's no way of escape. And then the pain and panic becomes pressurized. That leads to a point, what I call agony, right at the center. It becomes agonizing, as if being burned alive or drowning. What else? Being crushed, buried alive. And so there's this agonizing pain under pressure that then concentrates and focuses suicidal ideation. So that then suicide then becomes the best possible, only option to guarantee that I escape the pain.
Yeah, and so I mean, you've got basically the abuse that originally happened, then you've got the addiction that comes from trying to cope with the abuse, which leads to anxiety and trying to avoid any potential further abuse or pain. And then that sort of leads to this all-consuming feeling.
It's all-consuming, yes, it's right.
And all this combined sort of cripples someone. It keeps them from being able to get out of that prison.
Yes.
And so, and I think what I would say is that when someone's locked in that position, they really feel like they have no one to turn to, nowhere to go, nothing to help them get out of it. And they begin believing what you call the big lie. And
yes,
so do you want to talk
the
about
big
the
lie?
For a
yeah, and I mentioned, just for lack of better terminology, I actually like the terminology. It's the birth of a suicidal soul. And I think when those lies are conceived, that's when there's the birth of the suicidal soul. So all of that is pretty bad in and of itself, but it's the lies that then feed and drive everything. So what am I talking about? That all of the bad things that have ever happened to me in my life, they're my fault. It's my fault. I'm to blame because I'm a bad person. Because
you're a bad person, not good enough.
I'm not good enough. I'm a bad person. I'm just shoot straight. I'm disgusting. There's self-hatred. I actually deserve the bad things that happen to me in life. And so I say this suicidal soul because it's at the depths of my soul and in the depths of my heart are these lies. So then when I experience pain and feel the pain, when I see myself, actually, what I see is someone who deserves every bad thing that happens to me in life. What are some other lies? I'm all alone. Nobody cares. The world would be the world would be a better place without me. What are some other lies? And I kind of triage them, or in phases. So there's kind of like phase 1 lies, phase 2 lies. Phase 3 lies are those ones that center around suicide. Suicide's the best option. I can't take the pain anymore. Not another hour, not another minute, not another second. I can't take the pain anymore. And that then leads to the biggest lie of all, that suicide is the answer. And what we talked about before, I really liked it, is really it's kind of this perpetuating lie that suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And that is not true, because suicide is actually a temporary solution.
Yeah, it's a solution for the here and now, but in the eternal scheme of things, the eternal perspective, it's not a good answer.
So what about the problem of the soul then? So that you may take your own life by suicide, but the soul continues to live on for an eternity. And that's why I think that we need to focus on the soul and talk about the soul. And that's also kind of key to the healing intervention piece as well.
Sure. And as we move into the intervention piece, I'll say a few things about just, recognizing when someone may be suicidal. Oftentimes, we don't recognize it first because people that are suicidal are so isolated, they don't tend to share those thoughts.
Wow, that's a really good point.
So it's important that if you're a parent, as you talk to your teenagers, you are able to learn to recognize certain keys to help you think, there may be something else going on here we need to dig deeper into, so that you can sort of look for signs to know when someone may be going down this path. You have like an illustration, that's a 3-piece illustration of how to talk to somebody or how to recognize when somebody is in this position. So I'm going to turn that to you now.
Yeah, thanks. So I thought about kind of what brings a person to that point, and I think we've talked about that. But what about intervention then? So I have that conceptualized in my mind too. I'm getting older, and so I like to have things where I can remember them. So I think about the rescue. Just like with baby Jessica, they built that tunnel straight down, and then they were able to meet her and connect with her and actually rescue her after 56 hours. And so what about the intervention? So I think I'll just, if you don't mind, lay out the strategy of intervention, and then we can kind of pick it apart, maybe step by step.
I think that's great.
So I think about rescue, you're going to call EMT, I think, for the rescue. So that's how I remember it, so that when I draw it out on paper, or I plug it into my illustration, and I have just like a one-page picture in my mind of what all of this looks like. The first is E for empathy. And what I put next to empathy in parentheses is the power of connection. And so I think that that's the first key, is to then be able to connect with someone, the person who's struggling, at the deepest point of suffering.
Yeah, sure.
And so that's a skill.
It is.
It's a skill in and of itself to build that helping relationship, that therapeutic relationship. It's actually what I teach here at Criswell College, to be able to connect with the person and meet that person at the deepest point of suffering. It's called empathy. It's called connection.
And in a society where you go, hey, how you doing? Hey, I'm fine. I'm not going to tell you my real struggles. It becomes, I think, even more important to make those deep connections with people to see how they're really doing. You know, we're so superficial in American culture. We're so focused on just ourselves and getting to where we need to be, or whatever. We ask someone how they're doing. What we really mean is just, hey, and that's
it's true. Or Facebook, or a tweet. You know, I'm really struggling here. Oh, hey, tweet. Praying for you. What is that? Maybe 1 second, 1.5 seconds. So you're right. It's our kind of Facebook, kind of fake book culture that then really keeps us disconnected, especially when someone's at the point of despair. The second part of that, though, is once you're connected at that deepest point of suffering, what are you going to do? And so if the lies, I believe, drive what kind of brings me to that point where I'm trapped in despair, I do think that focusing on the lies at the point of trauma is the best way to discover freedom. The truth will set you free. There's power in that. And so it's really a process where we take a look at the trauma, the first and worst trauma. And it was really, as I mentioned before, when I started learning about trauma and the research that surrounds trauma and intervention, is where all the bells and lights and whistles, it was the missing piece for me. So to be able to tap into the trauma, examine the trauma, but then examine the lies that I told myself at the point of trauma, because that's when I took those lies, put them in the deepest part of my heart, deepest part of my mind, deepest part of my soul, and then to be able to look at those and process those is really the first and most important step to freedom. The truth will set you free.
Yeah, very good, very good.
So if we look at, go ahead.
We've got empathy.
Yes.
So following on the empathy, we have...
Yes, and so empathy, the power of connection at that deepest point of suffering is key. And then we have M is for mastery. Mastery. And so in parentheses next to mastery, I have the power of confidence. And so what happens at this phase or this stage of intervention is I begin taking responsibility for my own personal health and well-being. If I'm a person that is characterized by self-hatred, and I look in the mirror and I see a person that I hate, and I look at my life and I see a life that I hate, more than likely I'm going to neglect my own personal health and well-being and look for others to rescue me. What I don't realize when I'm in the prison is that I got the key in my front pocket. I have the key. I'm looking everywhere else for the key, looking everywhere else, and all of the things this world has to offer for salvation. What I don't realize is I have the key right in my front pocket to begin to take responsibility for my own personal health and well-being.
Yeah, sure. And once you've made a connection with someone who can help you empathetically get to that root concern, right? Get to where those lies are being borne out. Once you can be there with someone, you realize these things aren't true. That's sort of foundational to beginning to build that confidence to have mastery over your own actions and become responsible for what you do.
It's exactly it. In fact, I kind of like your words better than my own words. But when you're talking,
Oh, no.
I have a picture that's in my mind. I saw it with my youngest son. He was going to a birthday party, and it was at the Summit. And the Summit is a place where people can go and hang out, and then it's like a rock climbing thing. And so I went there. He was there for a birthday party. He showed up, and there's a person that she got herself in a harness. She had the rope. She put my son in the harness. He had the rope. And then what she did was, okay, so I'm going to show you how to climb to the very top and then come down. And so she showed him the exact steps to take.
Yeah, sure.
Came down. And then she just step by step showed my son, this is where you put your foot, this is where you put your hand. I'm with you. I really think that first step with the empathy and connection, it builds trust. So there's trust there.
Certainly.
So the person, I think, gains enough trust to say, all right, I think I can trust you. I need to trust somebody. I'm not going to get out of this on my own. I've got to trust somebody. Put my foot here, and you know what happens? Confidence is built step by step. The person's though right there with the rope. I can't climb out of here for you, but I can be here with you, and I'm not letting go of the rope. And it provides that confidence for the person to begin to take these initial steps to take personal responsibility to dig themselves out of this hole.
Yeah, exactly. You know, you need, in the process of becoming a confident person, becoming someone who doesn't continue to hate yourself, you need someone there beside you, coaching you, but you also, as you build that trust slowly, you can stand more and more on your own. Eventually, you can take that rope yourself, right? And you can use it to belay yourself up and down, the rocks. But as you begin, you don't have the foundation needed yet. It's still shaky from all the lies you've been taught, or all the lies you believed.
Yes.
So we've got the initial empathy.
Yes.
Then we have the mastery.
Mastery, which is confidence. It's not self-esteem. It's confidence. It's not everybody wins. It's like, no, you're going to have to take responsibility for yourself.
Yeah.
And when I listen to you, when you at that place, when you look around, you see other people who are climbing the rock climbing thing by themselves. And then you look over to advanced, they're doing the rock climbing thing. They don't even have any ropes at all. And so you can see that it's a process of mastery and building confidence. And one thing I want to say, and then we'll move to the T, is this. A couple of things that I realize when, like you said, I realize I'm not alone. This is a person who's been where I've been.
Yeah.
And then the mastery part is you begin to take those steps and build confidence. You begin to realize a couple of things I don't want to miss. And that is the key. I have the key to my freedom in my pocket. The other thing is this, is that what I didn't realize all along, because it was so dark, and I would tell myself that I'm all alone, realizing that there's somebody else and that I'm not alone is really powerful and healing in and of itself. What begins to happen, though, as I gain confidence and take these steps and begin to trust someone, I realized I wasn't alone all along, that actually Christ was with me. I missed that down in the deep, dark depths. I missed that Christ was actually right there with me. The scripture that comes to mind is, He's close to the brokenhearted. He's close to the crushed in spirit. And he's as close to me at that time than any other time.
You know, in his earthly ministry, Christ spent time talking to women who at the time typically men didn't talk to in Jewish culture in public. He spent time going out of his way to talk to hated minority groups. He took time to go to the despised in culture, to go to those who had been looked down upon or turned away from by their own people, like the tax collectors. You know, the Jews didn't like the tax collectors because they had basically said, we'll take money from our people and give it to the Roman government, and the Jews were oppressed by them. And so the tax collectors were sort of seen as committing treason against the Jews, and Jesus went directly to them and said, hey, there's a better way. And you know, he goes to all these people who the rest of the religious elite in the Jewish society said, they're not worth our time.
Yeah.
And you see that same motif throughout all of Scripture, right? Christ is and God is always concerned for the downtrodden, the brokenhearted, the beaten down, the poor, the oppressed, the abused, and so on. I mean, it's all there in Scripture.
Yeah, it's a good word. And you know, Scott, I appreciate you bringing that up too, because what I see in Scripture is that he really provides a great model for what I'm saying are the keys to freedom, in that he meets that person who is suffering right where they are, even with Adam and Eve. He's like right at the fall, probably at the greatest point of despair in the history of mankind. He met them at their point of suffering.
He does. He
the
says,
woman
I'll
at the well.
provide you a covering. I'll make the first sacrifice for you, right? You know, God always goes to his people first to rescue them.
Yes.
But unfortunately, sometimes we just don't see that because we are so focused on our vision that we can't really step back and see what's happening elsewhere. And you mentioned, you know, on the climb, you know, people are climbing up. You know, my guess is your son would look over and probably see someone else being trained, you know, how to get up the rocks. And then you start to realize that, you know, actually, everybody's got issues to deal with. Everybody's got hurts. Everybody's got pain. Everybody's had suffering. I sound like I'm in Star Wars right now, but you know, in life, you know, because we live in a fallen, sinful world, everybody who is created in God's image bears God's image, but that image is broken in us all because of sin. And
it's
because
really good.
God's image is broken in us, we all have struggles, and so we like to sort of think we're alone because we may not want to acknowledge that there's faults in everybody, or we may just feel like it's better to be isolated than to be vulnerable. But whatever the case is, you know, people around you are struggling, and when you have that empathy and you start making these connections, you start realizing very quickly, oh no, we've all got issues to deal with.
Yeah, man. And once again, it's the truth that will set you free. And so the bad things that happen in life, it may not be because I'm bad and I deserve to be punished. It may be that life, we want to think that life is good, but you know, life's basically a beatdown, and we all suffer hardship, and we're all going to find ourselves at rock bottom. And it may have something to do with me and my own choices. It may not have anything to do with me and my own choices, or whether I'm a good person or a bad person, and what I deserve or don't deserve. So we begin to, the truth comes in during that, it's really during the deepest point and darkest point of despair, as a person begins to take these steps, more and more light comes in that I think helps to build motivation and confidence and helps begin to dispel the lies. But what you've mentioned really leads us to, I think, the third step, and that is transparency. And so in parentheses next to the word transparency, I put the power of community. And so I think about 12-step programs and faith-based programs. I've been a part of Region at Watermark and also at Lake Point. And that's what that is. You know, steps number 1 and number 2 is just to admit that my life is in complete chaos and it is a mess. And I must surrender to Christ all of who I am so that He can miraculously begin to make sense out of the chaos. It's that first step is to humbly surrender. And as you know, those next steps are then in the context of transparent, accountable relationship. So I can be who I am, I can share my struggles, and you know what happens? People draw close.
They do.
People draw close. A lot of times, you know, I'll share my struggles. I believe the lie. Well, if I share my struggle, it's going to make everything 100 times worse. So we learn to suffer in silence. But what I experienced in Region was a game changer, a life changer, in that I shared my struggles and people came in close and said, yeah, we have struggles too.
Yeah.
We're going to find our strength in Christ and then support, encourage one another to then, I think, experience freedom in Christ together.
Yeah, you know, transparency builds trust. And when you have this community where you're actually transparent with one another, it lends itself towards accountability. Hey, I'm transparent, so am I. We need to help each other not make these same mistakes, not continue to believe these lies, and so on and so on. And, you know, I've said this, I think, in other videos before, but, you know, in America, we often in the church think we need to get ourselves straightened out so we can go to church. And I think in American culture on the whole, it's you've got to have yourself together to be presentable in public. And in reality, you know, as Christians, we go to church with all of our baggage so that we can be with a community of other people with the same struggles that we have, so that we can all come together and say we all need Christ to help us get straightened out. And
yeah, it's really good.
It's a
good word.
A misnomer that you have to get straightened out first to go be in the community. No. You go to the community so that you can all work your problems out together. And in the same way with the transparency, you know, with the EMT illustration, you know, you are transparent. You go to the community broken. You go to the community open. You go to the community honest, so that you guys can work together to sort of get yourselves out of the state you've been in. And just like with the rock climbing, you know, once you get healed to the point where you can really stand on your own, you now have the responsibility and opportunity to then go back to the community and say, now who can I help?
Yeah,
And
yeah, it's good. So I'm listening to you. I think I'm going to make some changes. I
Yeah,
actually
please do.
like your words better than my words, so that I might put transparency / trust, and then in parentheses, the power of community. Because as we've talked, I realized, you know, it's a process of building trust, so that I trust this one person who I think is an expert, who knows, who's been there and has experienced some steps to freedom. And then I then have trust and confidence to then maybe be vulnerable in front of others, be transparent in front of others. And so here then is that community. So that, yeah, I continue to build trust, I continue to be vulnerable, continue to bring truth to dispel the lies. You know, this one big, huge lie that has plagued me, I'm 55 years old, for my entire life is this: I'm not worthy of love and life. When I was at the point of despair, that is the lie that I believed in the deepest part of my heart and the deepest part of my soul. But in this fellowship, in this community, it is not true. I can be completely who I am and find support and encouragement and love, and it continues to build confidence. But I don't want to stop there, because then the end of the process is not simply healing.
Mm-hmm.
The end of the process is I then discover purpose. It's not just about me. I discover purpose, so then, you know what? I can be the one that I'm harnessed up. I got the rope. Here comes the next person. I'm like, you know, I've been there. I can help you. I'm going to get you harnessed up. This is what this looks like right here.
Yeah.
And here's the first few steps to take so that...
Yeah, it's better to put your foot here than here.
Yes.
If you put your foot here, you're more likely to slip and fall again.
Or let's get you harnessed up to start with, right?
Yeah.
Or because what you're going to do is you're going to slip and fall, and then you're going to become discouraged and give up. Let's just do this thing the right way and take some good initial steps to build confidence, so that really, you know, God is using what you experienced at the point of despair, at the point of saying, I don't want to live anymore, and He's giving you purpose and life. And I think that's the whole point. That's the process.
Yeah, I think that's really good. You know, we're created for community. You know, God intended for humans to have community from the garden. You know, God and Adam are the only ones in the garden, and God says to Adam, it's not good for you to be alone. You know, Adam could easily say, well, I'm not alone, you're here, God. But that's not what God means. What He means is you need other people. I've created you to have a relationship or relationships with other people. And so He creates Eve. And then the first thing He says to him is, now, you know, have children, multiply, fill the earth. Well, filling the earth means you're going from a garden to a society. And in our struggles, it's important for us to recognize that we don't need to stay alone in our own garden, but we need to go into society, into places where other people with our same struggles are, where we can be together, where we can help one another build each other up to be stronger, and to, as you say, not just be healed, but be able to then, you know, get to the point where we can give back and find purpose in moving forward. No matter what's happened to us in the past, there's always opportunity for more purpose in the future moving forward.
Yeah, and a couple of things I guess I want to clarify. Thanks for kind of recapping. It really helps for me to maybe clean a couple of things up in just the word healing. So it might be that I still struggle with depression or anxiety or suicidal thoughts. It's not that somehow I'm completely healed. I might be. God can heal. God can heal miraculously, but I still may struggle. So I wanted to make that point. The other point is that community and fellowship is not the end in and of itself. I think the end is that really I realize my purpose, and I'm able to focus on my purpose and actually fulfill my purpose for God's great glory, even though I might still struggle.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's an important clarification there. What do you think?
Paul. That's very good. You know, in the New Testament, Paul says, hey, I've got this thorn in my side. Nobody knows what it is. We're not going to speculate today, right? But he says, I prayed for God to remove it, He did 3 times, and God kept saying, no, my grace is sufficient for you. So Paul says, at that point, I stopped praying for God to remove it and learned to live with this continual struggle that I had, and continue to be, you know, used by God for His glory, despite whatever that struggle was.
Yeah.
And you know, as Christians today, we all still have our struggles, right? And, you know, we're talking about suicide, but you know, there are people that are addicted to alcohol, and when they become sober, they become recovering alcoholics. That, you know, oftentimes that desire to continue to get another drink doesn't go away completely. And no matter what it is that people struggle with, no matter what things plague us, right? We're not ever to the point in this life where we're no longer tempted by things or plagued by things that cause us harm. And so, in spite of and despite all of the things that have been a mess in our life in the past, God continues to want to use us moving forward, because His entire plan of ministry is using broken people to share His kingdom.
Yeah, I think it's a great word. And I just want to say to you, thanks. And then to those who are listening, so just to be transparent, sometimes I find it hard to believe myself that I actually did not want to live. But to let you know, in taking these steps that I just mentioned, and then finding purpose, and I do see, at this point in my life, I do see my purpose as getting this word out, meeting with those who struggle, presenting on these topics: depression, anxiety, suicide. I do see that is my purpose, my calling in life. And I want to let you know this, that in fulfilling that purpose, there's something that I experience now I never thought was possible. And you know what that is? It's joy, and it's gratitude, and it's thankfulness to be alive. And I just think I've seen it work for me, the process. I've seen it work for others, the process. And I don't know what to say outside of just thank God for His miraculous intervention.
So if you know someone who's struggling, we want to encourage you to reach out to them, make connections with them, see what you can do to help them, and what you can do to get them to someone who is prepared to be able to help them in ways that you might not be able to. And if you are struggling, we want to encourage you to reach out to someone, make a connection with somebody. I can promise you that there are people who love you in this world, and that if you're willing to reach out, most people don't want your demise. They want good things for you. As a professor, I have students in class. I make them give presentations on occasion, and sometimes they get a little nervous.
Talk about anxiety.
What if my classmates want to see me fail? Your classmates don't want to see you fail. They want you to do a good job, just like your professor wants you to do a good job. And if you're struggling with any kind of mental issue, right? There are people out there that want to see you get help. And so if nothing else, hopefully this video has encouraged you to make that leap of faith to go out and try to make a connection with somebody that you trust, that you can trust, who will be able to help get you to where you need to be to get help. And
that's a good word.
That's really kind of where we're at for today. But thank you guys so much for watching.
Yes, thank you.
And we'll see you again next